There it goes.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board attendance, we are all in attendance tonight except Mr. Green, who is out with the flu. I haven't been given any agenda modifications, so we can dispense with those unless someone else has one. Not seeing any. Moving on, spotlights on success. Superintendent Perry.
Good evening. Our first spotlight will be presented by Karina Lee, the Executive Director of Salem-Keizer Education Foundation.
Thank you so very much. I would like to invite volunteers Bob and Pat Wright and Principal Monica Takata from Bush Elementary School up to the front to join Chair Kylo and Superintendent Perry. Oh, and it's the whole team. Come on, let's head on up. I'm gonna take pictures. I'm particularly fond of this story since we are on Valentine's Eve. Volunteers Bob and Pat Wright are beloved by the students, parents, and staff at Bush Elementary School. We are very pleased to recognize the couple as our Volunteers of the Month for February 2018. I want you all to listen to this. The couple has been volunteering together every Tuesday at Bush Elementary for the last 22 years. They were nominated for tonight. They were nominated for tonight's recognition by Principal Monica Takata. Bob is a retired engineer who worked for 30 years as a bridge designer for the Oregon Department of Transportation. Pat is a retired Salem-Keizer elementary school teacher who taught first and second grade for 20 years at Shirley Elementary and Hayesville Elementary. As a former engineer, guess what? Bob's really good at math. He works with students learning their multiplication tables in 4th and 5th grade classes taught by teachers Margaret Hill, Patricia Aguilera, and Noah Hall. Pat has helped out for several years in teacher Tanya Hauk's kindergarten class, working with students one-on-one, teaching beginning reading, reading readiness, and sounds. Bob says that anyone thinking of volunteering at Bush Elementary is in for a great experience. Quote, "Whoever volunteers here can look forward to working with very good teachers and very dedicated people," Bob said. Pat agreed and said, "I appreciated volunteers so much when I was a teacher. It's hard for a teacher to get to spend one-on-one time with students. Volunteers really make a difference." Thank you, Bob and Pat Wright, for making a difference at Bush Elementary School for more than 2 decades. It's a sincere pleasure to honor such a wonderful couple as our Valentine's Month Volunteer of the Month.
Our next spotlight will be presented by Lillian Govis, our Director of Community Relations and Communications.
All right, I'm so excited to recognize Principal Tony Shaker with Salem Electric, Walker Middle School Principal Paul Myers for our Business Partner of the Month for February 2018, Salem Electric. So Paul Myers nominated Shaker Electric for the work that they're doing at Walker Middle School as their partner. Representing them tonight is Tony Shaker, the general manager, not principal. Founded in 1938, Salem Electric is a nonprofit electric cooperative serving more than 18,000 members in parts of the cities of Salem and Keizer. They've been a business partner with Walker Middle School for many years and continue to support Walker every year with a substantial donation through the school's annual Business Partner fundraiser. These donations fund things like no tardy parties, which I want to go to, field trips, math pentagames registration fees, and very critical positive behavioral interventions and support. Salem Electric also donates towards specific programs within the school, such as AVID, student leadership, and sports team. Recently, Salem Electric helped Walker raise awareness about the importance of school attendance by funding several banners in the school's entryway. Salem Electric has also helped out with the cost of other items to support student activities when Walker staff had made specific requests for support. Principal Myers would like to thank Salem Electric for its generous and continued support of Walker Middle School. Congratulations, Salem Electric. Thank you, Tony Shaker. We appreciate you, and we are so proud to name you our Business Partner of the Month for February 2018.
And our next spotlights will be presented by Lisa Harlan, Director of Elementary Education.
Good evening. I'd like to invite Principal Tom Charbonneau and students and staff from Forest Ridge Elementary School. Here they come. So tonight we want to recognize two fifth grade students from Forest Ridge, Jasmine Miller and Cameron Van de Koevering. They were selected by their peers across Oregon as finalists last month in Oregon's Kid Governor competition. These students created videos about topics they wanted to help out with if they were elected as Kid Governor. Career and technical education teacher Jonathan Shea helped the two finalists and other students at Forest Ridge make videos about their campaign platforms. Jasmine's video focused on helping foster children. She said that she was motivated to run for Kid Governor because she wanted to help other kids in our community. Cameron's video was devoted to emergency preparedness and encouraged families to have smoke detectors, a fire extinguisher, and an escape plan at home in case of emergencies. After the videos were made, they were uploaded to the Oregon Kid Governor website. Fifth graders from across Oregon watched the videos and voted for the ones they liked best. Over 1,500 students in Oregon voted. Jasmine and Cameron's videos were picked as two of the top 8 favorite in the state of Oregon. So they got to attend the swearing-in ceremony on January 8th of this year's Kid Governor, Dom Peters from Willamette Valley Christian School in Brooks. The purpose of the Kid Governor program is to teach fifth graders about how government works. Oregon is the second state in the U.S. to launch this program. Jasmine said she enjoyed being invited to the Kid Governor inauguration ceremony. We got to go to the inauguration, and it was pretty cool because we got to see how a real inauguration would work, she said. Cameron said he learned a lot about our system of government. I got to learn about the 3 branches of government and how they all need each other and what they do, he said. Congratulations, Jasmine and Cameron, on being selected by 5th graders across Oregon as finalists in this year's Kid Governor program.
Okay. Next on the agenda would be public comment related to agenda items. The first speaker I've listed is Jackie Frankie. We ask you to come forward, give your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes. When the orange light goes on, you have 1 minute left. When the red light goes on, you get this.
I can do that.
Okay, you're on.
Hi, I'm Jackie Frankie. I live at 4472 Hayesville Drive Northeast in Salem, and I'm representing Catholic Community Services Foundation tonight. The Statesman Journal has carried a lot of articles in the paper recently about homeless children and families in our community, and many of those children are in our school district. The city of Salem is concerned, and they have, along with the homeless issue, low-income affordable housing, placed that issue as a priority in their current strategic plan. Today, even though an organization is a nonprofit, they must pay property taxes on low-income affordable housing facilities built after 2012. Tonight, you're voting on an issue that will aid Catholic Community Services in operating 2 low-income affordable housing complexes in Salem, which were built after 2012. These 2 complexes have 24 units and serve families. They're in the Inglewood and Harriet Elementary School District, Parrish and Walker Middle School, and North Salem and West Salem High School. The 2017-18 property taxes dedicated to the school district total $7,294. All of the other complexes that Catholic Community Services have are grandfathered from paying property taxes because they were built prior to 2012. In 2022, the legislature will decide the future fate of all low-income affordable companies owned by nonprofit organizations. We have notified all of the taxing districts that would be affected from the loss of property taxes. It is also important to note that after all the approvals, CCS, Catholic Community Services, must still apply to the city each year to confirm that they are still complying with federal and state statutes regarding low-income and affordable housing. I must tell you that due to a number issue on our application, it was not presented last night at the city council meeting, but they did ask us to resubmit, which it was resubmitted, and they will have it on the February 26th board agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next would be Matt Hale.
Good evening. My name is Matt Hale, and I live at 5885 Poppy Hill Street Southeast in Salem. I have several concerns this evening about the proposed school bond measure. First, according to my recent property tax assessment, I paid $1.53 per $1,000 of assessed value for the 2 current school bonds. This proposed third bond would raise my assessment to $2.77 per 1,000 of assessed value, or an 81% increase. Second, this school bond will add a third bond to each property owner's tax burden, and I strongly urge that the school board report back to the voters on the previous 3 school bonds, 1992 for $96 million, 1998 for $177.8 million, and 2008 for $242.1 million. As voters, I believe that we deserve to know if the money was properly spent and if any bond funding was used for other expenditures not originally proposed by voters, and why. Third, I'm unable to find the full details of the bond feasibility study done by Melissa Martin of the Nelson Report and Jeannie Magmer of C&M Communications. I was able to find a little bit of information on the website, but not the full report. I would urge that the school board and the district provide that information to the voters so we can review it. For instance, I spent several hours reviewing the enhancements planned for this bond for several schools, and I question why, in one instance, why this bond would make major improvements to schools facing enrollment increases when other schools are facing enrollment decreases, and money would be spent on those schools as well. Why not redefine school boundaries to better match enrollment according to school capacity across the district? Fourth, I don't see any evidence in this school bond, and perhaps it's there, I just can't find it, of any of the Senate Bill 1149 funding that the school district receives every year from the Public Utility Commission. I would like to see that information presented to the public as well as we decide on the upcoming school bond. And last, all of us are facing increasing taxes. This 81% tax increase is a tremendous burden, and we're already suffering from an increased gasoline tax and future gasoline taxes, and as the legislature debates a carbon tax policy, we're likely to face increased energy and food taxes along the way too. So I urge everyone in this audience, as well as the school board and the district staff, to study the proposed bond measure carefully, look at it, and determine whether or not you can afford in your budget an 81% tax increase for school bonds. Ask if this is a reasonable amount, or are there less expensive alternatives across the district? Ask yourself if the previous bonds were passed in good faith and the money was well spent. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, that was our list of speakers. Action items. Next action item is the motion. Is there anyone who would like to move the adoption of Resolution 201718-3? Mr. Lee?
So moved.
Jesse, thank you. So let me read the full text of your motion. I move that the board adopt resolution number 201718-3, calling a measure election to submit to the electors of the district the question of contracting general obligation bonded indebtedness in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $619,700,000 to finance capital costs and related matters. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Discussion? Marty?
It's not exactly about this, but yet it is kind of about the testimony we just got. Is there any way to put that additional information he requested out there for all the voters to see?
Mr. Wolf?
Yes, I think some of it was actually part of the task force context as well, but we can certainly put it all out so that it's easily accessible. Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Kathy?
I really empathize with what was said, and I think we all have considered that very closely. But in this bond, everything that we looked at, we determined was very important for health and safety needs, as well as overcrowding needs. And I wish that it was different. I wish that we could reduce it greatly, but I can't get there.
Okay. Anyone else? No? No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, consent calendar. Is there a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented? Sharon, you can move. Anyone wish to say? Marty, thank you. Are there any of these items that anyone wishes to have polled? No, 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 no. Jesse? No? All right. Then I will, all those in favor of accepting the consent calendar as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Consent calendar is accepted unanimously. Okay, we're up to the readings. First reading is the math curriculum adoption. Superintendent Perry.
Right. Assistant Superintendent Carlisle is going to present you with information for a first reading on the elementary math curriculum adoption, and he'll walk you through the process. And if he has questions that he can't answer tonight, because we'll have a second reading, we can get those out and get those back to you.
Good evening, Chair Kylo and members of the board and Superintendent Perry. Many changes have occurred in education since the last time our school district adopted elementary materials for mathematics. That was back in 2004. The standards have changed, state assessments have changed, but for a host of reasons, there has not been a curriculum adoption that has helped our teachers and our students to keep pace with these changes. And we are recognizing that until a math adoption is accomplished for our elementary students and their teachers, they will not be adequately equipped for success in mathematics. We shared with you our achievement results with you in October, and you might remember having seen this slide, the blue reflecting district results and the orange reflecting state results. And we also reported to you that in order to know what is happening with data on student achievement, which is a lagging indicator, it requires us to also pay attention to data that shows growth. which is a leading indicator. And so we shared with you this slide as well. And in this slide, we see two important observations that are supported. One is that growth in our students' reading, which is on the left side of the slide, encourage us that achievement, which follows growth, achievement is on the rise. And we know that this is in no small part due to the tremendous commitment and effort our teachers have put forth with our latest curriculum adoption for literacy. The second important observation is that we've not seen that kind of growth in math, which you see on the right side. It underscores for us the reality that a math adoption is needed. And until our teachers have high-quality, aligned, supported materials, our results will be, at best, inconsistent. And we cannot come to you each year and assure you that you will be seeing the kinds of results in elementary math that you want and expect from us. And so that is why we are bringing to you this report this evening in this first reading of the elementary math adoption. And I'd like to highlight some of the things that we've mentioned in the report that you have in your board packet 6A. Last spring, we began a review process of available materials in elementary math, and we had specific criteria that we knew would be the essential in the materials that we would ultimately move forward in this process. We wanted to see a reflection and commitment to the Common Core state standards. We wanted to see materials of equal quality readily available in English and Spanish, and we wanted to make sure that these materials were approved by the state of Oregon. Under the leadership of Sue Luthra and her team, a review process ensued that followed our policy on instructional materials. District staff met with school personnel to determine what instructional materials are being used and what was needed at each of our elementary schools. And samples of 9 curriculum materials were requested, the 8 on the ODE approved list and 1 open educational resource. A steering committee was brought together made up of district administrators, instructional mentors, a parent community member, and representatives from the Special Education Department, the Office of Student Equity, Access, and Advancement, elementary curriculum, and secondary curriculum. The steering committee researched a set of principles that describe features of high-quality mathematics education, identified by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, with a special emphasis on access and equity and on teaching and learning. Together, the steering committee developed a scoring guide based on core beliefs around high-quality mathematics instruction. And after the initial review of 9 sets of curriculum materials, first with the lenses of access and equity and on teaching and learning, 3 curricula were eliminated from the process. The committee then reviewed the remaining 6 programs with the guiding principles and core beliefs associated with high-quality curriculum, assessments, and tools and technology. And from this review process, 2 programs were identified as the finalists: Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's Go Math and Curriculum Associates' Ready Mathematics for the Common Core. A second committee comprised of a representative from each of our elementary schools began to meet in October of 2017 with an emphasis on best practices in mathematics, communication and information back to their staff at each of their schools, an evaluation of the finalists, and feedback for our elementary level directors. Samples of each collection were set up at 4 host schools around the district, as well as all the schools getting instructions for how they could access these same materials online. Publisher presentations were scheduled and arrangements were made to stream these presentations to the host schools, so all staff members could be invited to attend either the live demonstration or those broadcasts. One publishing company requested a meeting specifically to provide information and clarification around supports in their instructional materials for bilingual teachers. And a small committee of bilingual teachers was brought together to hold a Skype interview with the author of the Spanish materials and to review the bilingual components, to ask questions and to give feedback. Using our district administrative procedure, the materials from both Curriculum Associates and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt kindergarten through grade 5 in both English and Spanish were available for review and comment at the following locations: Lancaster Professional Center, Chapman Hill Elementary, Cummings Elementary, Lamb Elementary, and Wright Elementary. Participants on both the Elementary Math Committee and the Steering Committee reviewed these materials from both finalists, listened to the publishers' presentations, and then used this information to score both materials against their 13 core beliefs. Scores indicated that Ready Mathematics for the Common Core best meets our criteria for all 5 guiding principles and best adheres to our core beliefs. We will now have these recommended materials on display for parent and community review and comment at Lancaster Professional Center starting tomorrow and going through March 7th. Information about the recommended curriculum can be made available and will be available to the community on our district website following tonight's first reading. We are grateful for Sue Luthra's work to facilitate such a comprehensive review of these materials and engaging so many members of our staff at our schools and continuing to bring these materials forward for continued review. Staff recommends approval of Curriculum Associates Ready Mathematics for the Common Core for our new mathematics instructional materials at the elementary level. You should have also received copies of the scoring guide and the score comparison among these 2 finalists. And if you have any questions tonight, Sue and I would be most happy to answer those questions.
I don't know what that means. Anyone have a question? Jesse?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, when it says that the scores indicate that Ready Mathematics for the Common Core best meets our criteria for all 5 guiding principles and best adheres to our core beliefs, whose core beliefs are those?
So what we did is the steering committee and the elementary math committee worked with the curriculum department, and we read some research around math and the book Principles to Action, and we looked through those, and we did the core beliefs around those. So those committees created the core beliefs, and we also had input from principal group, and then from the instructional mentor group and the elementary committee. They took it back to their schools, sent it back to us, and that's where it all came. And then we wrote guiding questions, and those guiding questions matched up to our core beliefs, and that's how they scored. They found evidence based on the core beliefs and the guiding questions for each area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I had one more. If that's
Sure.
Okay. I mean, of course, we haven't seen this because you're just now presenting it. Although the name suggests that it points towards our education towards a direction that I'm not a huge fan of, especially having gone through our school system not too long ago. Ready Mathematics for the Common Core sounds like the Common Core that we all know and love and lived through not too long ago. And I feel like the way that we're heading is towards more of a cookie cutter system. And as a kid, you feel like you're a sheep getting pushed through a farm. And what I would like to do is I think it'd be best for society as a whole and for our district to move away from the cookie cutter system and more towards like critical thinking and teaching kids math on and education really on a different level. So I'm not sure. I mean, of course, you got to keep an open mind and look at it. However, I would just like to express I'm not a huge fan of Common Core. So that's that.
Marty?
So when Director Lippold was asking about the core, are the beliefs, I don't think I actually heard what they were, though. Are there a few of them you could give us an example of the core beliefs that?
Oh, I don't have it with me, and if I had it in front of me. So one of the things we looked at access and equity. So what do we believe about access and equity? Like we want to make sure that all our materials are in Spanish and all our students with special needs have access and our tag kids could be enriched. We looked at teaching and learning and how that shows up in the curriculum. We looked at high quality curriculum. And one of the things about high quality curriculum is we want to make sure that students are critical thinkers and problem solvers. And this curriculum was real strong in that area, and that was one of our guiding principles, because that's what the world of math really is when you get out there in the world. We looked at the area of, sorry, I can't remember all of them right now.
That helps,
Okay,
though.
if I had it in
That
front of me, I
helps.
could.
Thank you.
Scoring guide, though,
Oh, they're
correct.
right here, yes.
Well,
Thank you.
No, that's not the scoring guide,
No.
but
Did you guys get a copy?
the
of
guiding
that?
beliefs are in the scoring guide. Did you not receive?
We did not put those in the
Okay.
packet, we
Oh.
just, but we'll get them.
So a teacher is, so one of the things we also looked at is how do the materials work for a teacher? Because the teacher has a short amount of time and they need to easily access their materials. And so that was another area that we looked at that was really important for our teachers, and that really came across. Student discourse, how do students talk about math and how do they problem solve in orally and on paper? That was part of it. And tools and technology. What is the technology piece of this curriculum and all the curriculums that we looked at? Is it accessible? Is it usable? And what areas do they actually use the technology for students and for teachers? And then the other one is assessment. How is it assessed? Are the assessments built in? Are they, do the assessments meet the standards? Do the assessments go with the actual unit that's being taught? I think those were actually all the areas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathy?
Have we ever put these books out to kids in a classroom?
Good question. Yes, we've been piloting this program in 6 of our elementary schools. 3 of our elementary schools, Scott Elementary, Highland Elementary, and Keizer Keizer and Morningside and Hayesville have all been using them, some for 3 years and some for 1 year. So we've got 6 schools using this program already, and it's been really successful.
So have we tested those kids? And were they doing perhaps better than with our old curriculum or with the other new one? And have we put both of the 2 new ones that you considered?
We only, the pilot started before I started in the position. The pilot started about 3 years ago, and we only piloted that one at that time. So the other one was not piloted. And yes, our student growth in those schools, so we look at growth in a couple different ways. One, we use the SBAC scores that we get in the spring. And the other thing is we're using EasyCBM, which is a universal screener. And last Friday was the last day of the collecting the data in that. So we haven't looked a lot at the comparison between fall and winter on those 6 schools for this year yet, because they just entered their scores. And the Ready Math Curriculum Associates, the company, they also have it, it's called iReady, which is a diagnostic, and kids take that 3 times a year too, which they're just finishing that right now too.
That's good, but we have been in one for 3 years previous to now. I think that it makes sense that staff that were familiar with that would choose that. I would if I was teaching.
And they did. That's this Ready Math.
So I'd like to
want
see the runner-up done in the same manner. And I would like to compare it that way. That would cause us to go backwards right now, but in the future, I'd rather test the 2 that had brought the most response at the same time, rather than having one that's already been used for 3 years, and then we ask those people how they like it. They already have their lesson plans made and things along with that series.
Knowing that we can't go back 3 years and ask schools to, have piloted curriculum in that fashion, and not knowing which of the collections would move forward through the process, we relied heavily on our teachers and their input on which collection would best match with their desires, their beliefs, their values in math instruction. And what we can share with you in the scoring that a large comprehensive group of people gave us in terms of feedback, it will reflect that in a substantial way, schools and staff preferred this collection over the second runner-up.
Okay. Kathy, did that answer your question?
Yes, that's all right.
Sharon? Chuck, still no?
Kind of an unrelated question. I'm looking at, it's been 14 years since we've adopted a new math curriculum. Do we have any curriculums that have not been updated in a longer period of time than that? I mean, 14 years seems like a long time, and I'm just wondering if there's other curriculum areas out there that have not been updated in the same length of time or longer.
The unfortunate but true answer to your question is yes, we have curriculum collections that are older than that. Still in use.
For example?
There are some social studies collections that are older than that. There are some health collections that we're still using that are older than that, for example.
Anyone else before I ask mine?
I just quick this time.
Quick,
Promise.
quick. We're counting the words.
Could we set up a meeting sometime for the board for us to all go over those curriculums so that way we can see which?
The materials are available for people to review, including board members, starting tomorrow at the district office through March 7th.
Oh, cool.
I understand, and I heard you, and I was listening as closely as I could. You have great confidence, I'm told, or you believe that you had a great deal of teacher input. How did you get this teacher input? What were the steps that would make me feel comfortable that I, as an elementary teacher, my input was heard if I wasn't at one of the special schools?
So we did a couple things. So the representative, we met like once a month after school for 2 hours with a representative from each school. Some was PD and some was information to take to and from.
Who were the representatives?
A teacher from every school.
A teacher, not
A classroom teacher.
not a mentor,
No,
not an intern,
classroom
an actual
teacher.
classroom teacher. Okay.
Yeah, so a classroom teacher. And those teachers are really passionate about math. And their job was to do a couple things. We set up a PD drive for them so they could take activities back to their school. They could do them with their staff and bring the information back to us. Then, so we did that throughout the time. We advertised to teachers when the materials were available to look at. We also gave them an online link so they could look at all of them online, if they didn't want to go to the site. And they all had a strengths and weakness type thing to fill out to give to us. So we have a stack in my office of all their feedback. And then they were all able to watch the presentation if they wanted to from the publisher.
So how many elementary teachers did you actually hear from?
Oh, you know what? I don't have the
Individuals.
exact number.
Take a guess.
I
It can't be over
Can't.
2,500.
no. I wouldn't want to take a guess. I would count.
But you could count.
I can give you a count.
Okay, and then what's the cost of this program?
There are
That
various.
seemed to be missing from the material too. I'm sure it was an oversight.
There are various cost options that we are reviewing. Thankfully, right now, the cost options all are structured on an Oregon contract. So those prices are locked in for the next couple of years. I think in 2021, that contract expires and the price will go substantially up. The question is whether we do a 4-year contract, a 6-year, or even perhaps an 8-year contract. And also, do we roll it out to all elementary schools at one time, or do we perhaps do a 2-year rollout? I would approximate the cost of the adoption somewhere between $4 and $5 million.
Thank you.
I
Anyone
got
else?
one more quick
Kathy?
one. Was the other series under an Oregon contract too for price?
Yes.
Okay, how did they rate that? Were they very close, very similar?
They were a little more expensive, but they were still a subscription model. So a subscription model means that once you pay, all materials are sent to schools each year, like, you know how your students have workbooks? So in a subscription model, if there's any updates to the curriculum, instead of having to like redo something and add, they send you the new workbooks every year for every student, and they are updated, which is huge. Teachers love that.
Okay.
It's a huge benefit to this company.
Anyone else? Thank you for the first reading.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
If board members want to look at the materials and you'd like somebody there to walk you through them, you can make a request through Assistant Superintendent Carlisle to do that.
Yeah.
And somebody could be there then.
Mr. Wolf, I believe?
Kathy.
Oh, Kathy, I'm
I
sorry.
wondered, they said that the materials had been put online earlier for one of the meetings. Can we access them online like those staff people did?
Okay, the question is going to be, can board members access them online? And we might just, we think we'll get you a link if you can. Yep.
Good. Good.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes, good evening, Chair Kylo, Superintendent Perry, members of the board. Tonight is the first reading for a request from Catholic Community Services Foundation for concurrence of tax-exempt status for low-income housing. You received testimony earlier tonight on this topic, so I won't reiterate all of those details. I would call your attention to the fact that while there currently is a moratorium at the state level for granting these exceptions, local jurisdictions have the option to create ordinances to support the tax exemption, of which both Marion County and the City of Salem have done. And but even if a city or county adopts a supporting ordinance, concurrence is still required from the taxing jurisdictions, equaling 51% of the total tax base. And in our district, we're one of the big three. And so for concurrence to be received, or at least approval of what the city and county have already approved in their ordinances, is a necessary part to receive that 51% concurrence. And so that's what the request is. It's a first reading tonight, no action to be taken. Essentially, that's kind of the situation facing the board is second reading and concurrence on the actions that the city and county have taken to support nonprofit low-income housing in the area.
Questions? Kathy?
Is that a one-time decision, or does this come up for renewal?
I believe your decision will be one time in concurrence, as was stated in the testimony, though there's an annual validation process that this organization, Catholic Community Services Foundation, would have to go and engage in with the city, because the application is through the city and also through the properties that are in the county as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yeah, sure.
So can I make a comment? It's not a
Yeah,
question.
you may.
So I
Before
know
I
this
ask
is just first reading, but having done a lot of work with our local nonprofits that provide low-income housing and homelessness shelters, I just think that this is not, to us, $7,000 doesn't appear to be a big ask, but I know how far $7,000 goes for your organization. So I just highly encourage us when it comes back to take a very careful look at this and be supportive of it. It just means so much to the community to be able to provide even those numbers of low-income housing, so thank you.
Okay, anyone else besides me? It's my understanding that we have verified that the letters were sent to all of the jurisdictions.
Yes, I've had direct
And
communication.
it's my
with
understanding
Frankie.
that Marion County did pass something already?
Yes, they have a supporting
Marion
ordinance.
County, yeah. What about Polk County?
I don't know about Polk.
Since they would be another one that would be impacted.
I'm not sure, but I could certainly follow up with Ms. Frankie.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for this report, this reading. Okay, you're on,
All right.
Superintendent Perry.
This is executive limitation number 8, financial administration is the 8th of 12 monitoring reports. This financial administration report is going to show a couple evidences of non-compliance. And I want to remind you that we have a new business manager or director of finance, and we have also automated our system. And what I heard from the auditors this time is that they were really pleased with our timeliness and organization around our materials that we submit to them. And as you submit more materials on time, you actually have more chances to have findings in your financial audit. I also had a bit of a conversation with our auditors about I was a little upset with them, I guess, that they had not let me know that there were some things that hadn't been completed timely in the past. So I passed that level of concern on to our auditors. The evidence of noncompliance is in our 16-17 reports. There was an over expenditure in facilities acquisition and construction appropriation in the grants funds of $90,234 on page 82. You actually, as a board, approved this, but we did not have an appropriate amount in the budget. So it wasn't anything that was hidden or that you didn't know about. We just didn't budget appropriately. And then the second evidence of noncompliance is in number 4. And there are a couple items. Well, the first one I've just mentioned about the mistake in the budgeting, but then also in our, we found an internal controls issue around our title payroll because we didn't have a documented approval for some transactions. This was just a couple places, and the amount of money was not great, but when they find an internal control issue, they note it on the audit. So we do not have any material weakness, it's just a notation, and I think it's really important that you could argue back and forth, are they really evidences of noncompliance or not, but I think it's really important to be transparent about those. So that's my executive limitation.
About 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. And 8. Let me keep going here. I starred mine and did not. Number 8 is around our public contracting, and I believe we may have actually noted this somewhere in the past, but we are currently working around that where we have too many purchases from one company, but they're across departments, so they should have been contracted differently. And then the last one is the, let me look at this for a second. This is the Secretary of State's report that we did not file on time, and we presented that follow-up to you already, but again, it's listed in this report. And okay, I'm gonna look at Mr. Wolf for a minute to see if I've missed anything.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think we've, as you had stated, some of these we had already made the board aware. We're just catching up in the formal document.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. We accept these reports by consensus. So thumbs up if you'll accept it, thumbs sideways if you can live with it, thumbs down if you have a problem. So it looks like it passes or is accepted. Thank you. Strategic plan report.
All right, Linda Myers, our Director of Strategic Initiatives, will do a quick presentation on strategic plan report around a balanced assessment and monitoring system.
Good evening, Chair Kylo and school board members. You should have received 7B in your packet is your comprehensive strategic plan report, as well as a copy of the few PowerPoint slides that I will be going over with you tonight. So what you see in front of you is a conceptual design for a balanced assessment system. So a balanced assessment system refers to the entire package of assessment tools that are used across the system to ensure that the individual needs of all students are met. We're not going to go through all of these individually, but I want to draw your attention to the top of the screen, a screening assessment, a universal screener. That is what we have now put in place with the implementation of EasyCBM. EasyCBM is a universal screening assessment. That means it is administered to every student multiple times per year, and the intent of a universal screener is to identify students who may be at risk. The bottom test is an accountability assessment. That would be something like SBAC or ELPA, and those are state accountability measures, and those also are administered to every student, except for in the case of SBAC where parents can opt out or where it is determined in a student's individualized education plan that it's not appropriate. But the two bookends of a balanced assessment system are assessments that are given to all students universally. The interior assessments there are for different purposes and are administered only to select group of students as needed. If we need to diagnose a student's strengths or weaknesses and determine what they might need, if we have a student currently in an intervention and we need to monitor their progress, that assessment is actually called progress monitoring, and or outcome assessments are very, very regular, common. That would be what you were used to even in attending school, so a unit test, a quiz, things that are administered in a classroom to inform teachers for future planning and to identify whether students met the learning objectives. So those are the main components of a balanced assessment system. Easy CBM, as I referred to, is a universal screener, meaning it's given to all elementary students in the fall, winter, and spring. So students scoring in the green zone are at low risk of failure. Yellow indicates some risk, and red indicates high risk. So for instance, in the kinder column, the column on the left is the kinder fall scores compared with the winter scores on the right of the kinder column. You want to see movement to more green and less red. This is the first year that we have had comprehensive screening data on every student in every school at the elementary level. Some middle schools also elected to use Easy CBM. Middle school students were also screened using either a Read 180 or Math 180 screening tool. And the high schools are currently using SBAC scores as a screener to identify students at risk. The other portion of strategic plan indicator number 3 has to do with our need for an early warning system. So the TIS department has been working to develop a data monitoring system allowing schools and the level office to identify risk factors for students in an effort to prevent academic failure or dropout. We have data available on attendance, discipline, test scores, grades, work habits, and more. So as an example, the dashboard can run a daily report on chronic absenteeism, mocked up there on the right-hand side. This could be used to demonstrate how many students have missed more than 10% of the total days they've been enrolled. So the pie chart here shows an absenteeism mock-up by level, but the data could be made accessible by school, by grade, by subgroup, allowing us the opportunity to drill down and identify where we may have risk factors and warnings. These are just samples. Neither of these are accurate data pulls, but they demonstrate the options that we have available. The visual on the left just demonstrates a quick way where we could lay state assessment scores, that happens to be SBAC math scores, and in a quick visual categorize those again in a risk factor category. So no risk, some risk, no risk, low risk, some risk, and high risk. So there's significant work to be continued on this, but we have started identifying the extensive measures that we want to include and are beginning to build those things that we want to track and monitor. So any questions specifically on either of those components?
Yeah. Anybody? Sharon?
Thank you. That was really impressive, and I'm so happy to hear that we were able to test all of we have data now on all of our elementary school students. You mentioned high school. We're only able to track test scores just from the SBAC. Does that allow us to look at pre-testing prior to the big SBAC testing at the later in the year?
We are not where we want to be with our high school assessment system. It's a tricky grade level grouping to identify a universal screener that works appropriately for all high schoolers, and then to identify a manner in which you can assess them. Do you choose a 9th grade English class? Even just getting to every student at the high school level can be tricky in scheduling. So we have not yet determined what will be the best long-term plan for our screening for the high school. But currently, the SBAC results at minimum give us some indicators as far as who's entering high school at risk based upon their 8th grade scores.
Go ahead.
So I want to add to that also with the early warning system, when we're looking at the attendance, grades, what extracurricular type activities, some of that early warning system will be where we'll really target at the high school level as well. So until we get the universal screener, that doesn't preclude it from being part of that early warning system.
Sharon?
Thank you. So given all of the other testing that we're doing prior to SBAC again, how close are we to deciding what the testing element will be, because obviously if we're waiting until someone is a freshman and we're waiting towards the end of the year and identifying they're at risk, what are the general thoughts on what
Sure.
we might do earlier in the year versus 8th grade transition?
Yeah, so my best response is that we move the dial way back, and we're not even talking about the entrance of 9th grade. We're not even necessarily talking about the entrance to 6th grade, but really being able to dial that back and identify, do we have attendance issues that show up even as early as kindergarten? The research is pretty clear that good attendance in kindergarten is actually a really good indicator of good attendance patterns all the way through 12th grade, as well as indicators that good attendance in September is a positive indicator for good attendance for the rest of the year. So identifying those high leverage markers along the way and being able to do that throughout every grade level should help us build a pretty robust package of data on a kid, hopefully well before they finish 8th grade and enter high school. We feel the urgency to move some of that more quickly for our kids who will be entering 9th grade, say this upcoming fall. But I'm confident Matt Bionde, our middle school level director, has done a really fabulous job of identifying data that he can just pull independently and begin to sort and manage some of that to get us some information before we have everything else dialed in.
Right now, Director Ramirez has a protocol around the high schools where he asks about attendance, how many kids were failing first semester, what is our Algebra 1 fail. So he has a data protocol he uses with them. It just doesn't show up in a dashboard yet, but he does that on his monthly site visits.
Sharon? Go ahead.
This is really great, and I appreciate the opportunity to ask more questions. I'm sorry. So I guess the concern then is, I've heard from the various schools that not all our schools are looking at that data when a student is transitioning between elementary, middle school, and high school. So the data may be out there, but right now it's not a requirement to look at that data and to identify students that may be at risk. So we may have the data, but how are we ensuring that it's being used and that we are identifying them, and it's not just stopping at each building?
So there actually is another phrase embedded in the language of strategic plan number 3, and that refers to an RTI system, so a response to intervention system, and that is that global data review that we are beginning to ask schools to implement in a more systematic way. We are not there yet. We actually have 5 elementary schools that are high leverage pilot locations through Oregon RTI, but the concept of the RTI work is that you do a look at 100% of your students, and then you begin to look at patterns of students who may be struggling in certain areas, attendance or discipline or academics.
Okay. Marty? No? No. Kathy? Then Jesse?
So will a classroom teacher get an individual list of those kids that are high in some of these areas? Not a group, not saying 3rd grade at Inglewood or whatever. Are we getting down to the actual kids?
Yep. So the Easy CBM system is incredibly teacher-friendly, and they actually can get a printout and a report of students' growth over time. Once we have kids in the system for multiple years, they will be able to watch the data over multiple years, and then any diagnostic components that we have in addition to that would be included in what will eventually be our RTI data system. So if we do a diagnostic assessment to identify students' weaknesses in the area of phonics, all of that information will be tracked and will follow with students so that teachers can absolutely drill down to the individual kids in their classroom.
I assume that'll be shared with parents then as well.
Yeah,
and
I don't.
counselors.
Yeah, I don't have a report template or anything like that yet, but it certainly is information. Easy CBM does have some nice parent reports. I don't know that we finalized our decisions on how we'll disseminate those, but certainly it is something that we can either embed into the regular report card or as an additional piece.
Okay. Kathy? Okay. Jesse?
I may have missed this in the beginning of this, so I apologize if that's the case. I was just wondering how long do you think until this will be fully implemented? What's the time frame? Is there one, or do we know?
So assessment is an area that is constantly being refined, and we learn new things from assessment research. But we, by the end of this year, will have a universal screener completely in place, and we will have those 3 data points for all of our elementary students. We will also have universal screener data, multiple data points for all of our middle schoolers. Our high schoolers, we need to determine what final data points we want to embed in that, but the concept of a universal screener is solidly in place. We also have many, many diagnostic assessments already out there, so the next step in our plan is to make sure that we can connect what diagnostic assessments are telling us and connecting those to specific interventions. So if a student scores here, we should intervene with this sort of strategy or this sort of program, and making some of those connections for teachers. I would say 3 years from now, we will be in a place where we have a robust data system that we can report out on, and teachers will have been embedded in a better routine. 5 years from now, we should be able to access any kind of data that we want, and teachers will be well versed in managing that as a regular part of their educational routine.
That's exciting.
So.
Kathy?
This made me think of the fact that we did institute district-wide early ed several years ago. Can we see any definite change, and are we exploring that kind of data?
I haven't done any sort of comparative analysis, but that would certainly be an interesting component for us to research, and may actually be an appropriate data point to embed in an early learning report, next time that the preschool program is in front of you. I don't have that data at my fingertips, but we certainly could do some research and pull some of that.
It would seem wise. The local newspaper has an article on it, and so did the Oregonian. And they are saying we aren't producing data, and it's still unknown, but it seems like there's holes in that progress. Yeah. So I would like to encourage that we do collect that as soon as possible.
Our early learning department, Stephanie Wetzel, the coordinator of that work, actually does do a nice job of collecting student success data over the course of the year, or 2 years if we have students for age 3 and 4. But I haven't specifically done any work to correlate students who participate in our preschool programming versus students that don't, and their future success.
Good.
Okay. Anyone else? That's it. Thank you, Linda. At this time, I would like to take a 7-minute break. And so we'll break for 7 minutes and be back. I would like to see
presentation, and then he'll turn it over to John Bandriel, our Director of Safety and Risk Management Services.
Yes, good evening once again, and John, you can come on up. I'm going to hand this over to you quickly. I just wanted to start by saying John's in a relatively new role, started in 2015 as the Director of Safety and Risk Management Services, but it's really a culmination of kind of over 30 years. I know it sounds like a long time, but it's true. John started as a school psychologist back in '86, and in 1999, with our district, started working on the threat assessment that is a nationally recognized approach. In fact, this is the second edition of Assessing Student Threats, a handbook for implementing the Salem-Keizer system. And he won't toot his own horn, but I thought it was important for you all to know that this is not just a good idea. This is a industry promising and best practice, and is emulated or trying to be emulated in many districts throughout the state and throughout the country. And just recently, and I'd also say that Ray Bird, our security supervisor, was also involved in this work as well. So kudos to Ray. And most recently, we've had a couple program reviews by national and international experts in this arena. One was from Bill Modzaleski, who is a senior administrator at the Department of Education, National Department of Education, and was really the grandfather of threat assessment, beginning this work over 30 years ago as well. And then most recently, Michael Dorn, the CEO of Safe Haven International, is again an international expert in emergency management, threat assessment, but also active shooters, and is involved in every after-action report and assessment of active shooter incidents throughout the country. and has been advisor to 3 different presidential administrations. So a lot of credentials coming in and taking a look at our programs, giving us great ideas on how to move forward, building on the success that we already have in place. So with that as a backdrop, I'd like to have John Vendrell come up and guide you through the presentation.
Good evening, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Lee, Superintendent Perry, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm here to provide you with a snapshot of the district threat assessment system, violence prevention, and suicide prevention system. Known as the Salem-Keizer threat response system, it is protocol-driven, which means that it is a collection of step-by-step instructions and guided questions that lead school threat assessment teams through the process of reporting, investigating, and preventing potentially dangerous situations. It's not a system that is reactive or punitive. Instead, it is a prevention model that is structured to be responsive to risk factors by providing intervention and supervision that decreases dangerous behavior. The system covers 5 areas of focus. Threat assessment for threats of violence from one student or students directed at other people. Suicide risk, which assesses suicidal thoughts or behavior. Student sexual misconduct, which assesses sexual conduct that is considered non-normative based on age or developmental functioning. Fire setting behavior, which assesses fire setting that is unsafe and inappropriate. And threats made by adults directed at our staff or our students. So let's take a closer look. Looking at the red star, you can see that once a concern is identified, members of the school site team, called the Level 1 team, examine it, that's the purple box, and determine if there is a need to conduct an assessment using the assessment systems protocols. As you can see in the green box, the Level 1 team consists of administrators, counselors, and school resource officers. Additionally, staff, parents, and others who know the student or students of concern are also included in the Level 1 assessment as sources of information. The Level 1 team then identifies risk and addresses that risk with intervention and supervision strategies. One of those strategies can be a referral to the Level 2 team, that's the yellow box, which consists of district personnel, including district psychologists who provide leadership, and community partners who provide resources and consultation to assist with the situation. Once again, in the yellow box, those community partners are law enforcement, juvenile services, Oregon Youth Authority, Public Mental Health, and the Willamette Education Service District, which provides the same threat assessment and response services to their rural communities. As you can see from this expanded flow chart, at every point of assessment there is teamwork, multidisciplinary decision-making, collaboration, and prevention strategies. As you can also see, law enforcement is a key partner in the process. And that's not just to provide criminal investigation, although they do so when it is indicated, but to participate in prevention decisions and the exploration of resources. As I noted earlier, the system is engaged when there is either behavior or communication suggesting potential harm to a student, students, or a person. The good news is the Salem-Keizer community has always been one that is willing to report at-risk behavior. And for the last 18 years, while the system has been in place, the district threat response system has been immediately responsive. In fact, within our system, school staff invite reporting, even anonymous reporting, from students, parents, and community. However, outside of our educational and law enforcement avenues that we use currently, we have not had a formal structure for people to make reports. That is until recently, when the Oregon legislature passed a bill providing a tip line. Called Safe Oregon, this tip line can be used either anonymously or with identification. The service has 24-hour coverage, and once information is received, it is measured for urgency and is either sent by phone to law enforcement and the school administrator, or in cases that are not urgent, sent by email. The majority of the cases are harassment, bullying, and other non-urgent situations, but there are occasional reports of suicidal ideation or threats of violence. Tonight, I'm pleased to report to you that we are now in the process of training our administrators on using this service, and will be providing access information to the community in the beginning of March. The reports received from the Safe Oregon tip line will be an additional source of information that will be examined and assessed through the district threat response system. In the same way, threatening communications and behavior are now assessed. So the transition to the Oregon tip line should be quite smooth. As additional information to this evening's presentation, I wanted to highlight the district's prevention programs for gang-related behavior and bullying. So I'll start with gang-related behavior. To address gang issues, the district is a partner in the Gang Prevention Team, a group of administrators and law enforcement officers that meet monthly to identify gang activity, prevent recruitment, problem-solve potential conflict, and rally resources as interventions. Additionally, counselors, teachers, and administrators use open dialogue, conflict resolution interventions, and decrease gang-related behavior in the schools and the community. To address bullying, the district uses curriculums called Second Step and Bully Blockers. Additionally, counselors, behavior specialists, and administrators use operational strategies like increased supervision, studies to identify locations within the school where bully behavior occurs, zoning to divide students who have conflicts, and conflict resolution and social skills training to prevent or mitigate bullying situations. To note, I just found out about a bully prevention program at CTEC. Shout out to Vice Chair Lee. CTEC uses their professional skills training to implement their bully prevention, and they do that by teaching the students that bully behavior will never be tolerated in the workplace. So an interesting strategy that they're using. Finally, as a district, to further decrease gang-related activity, bullying, and threatening behavior, we look forward to the full implementation of PBIS and social emotional learning, as well as our improving relationships with our public mental health partners. Questions? Sorry about skipping the slide, by the way.
I'm a little concerned in that I don't see parents brought into the activities very early on this at all.
You mean the assessment process? They are, yes. I think what you have is a kind of a macro. Why don't I flip back, because my copies are. If you look, other sources of information, teachers, coaches, case managers, that same box here. I can't read that. Does it not say parents up there? Oh, they are brought in. So the protocol requires that parents be invited or interviewed as a part of the process, either to the meeting or to gather information. There are many times when parents' work schedules won't allow them into the meeting, but their information is accessed.
Where would that normally happen? In which
The green
step?
box, yeah.
At level 1, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What?
I'm sorry.
That's fine. Next would be looking at the upcoming calendar. We have a meeting in 2 weeks. It will be a budget committee meeting as well as a board business meeting. Our next regular meeting will be March 13th. After that, budget committee meeting is on March 20th due to spring break. And then we start budget committee season on April 24th. We'll all want to be here to be riveted by the superintendent's budget message. Correct?
Correct.
Correct, riveted.
Riveted.
Riveted. Okay. So please look at these dates and get them on your calendar. All right, thank you. The next item is a Mike Wolf. This is the draft findings of fact in support of the use of construction. Do you want to address that quickly?
Yes, when we had talked about the contracting methodologies at our last board meeting, you had a draft example of what a findings of fact would look like, and this is the draft findings of fact that would support the conversation that we'll have at the next meeting on the 27th. And so this is for informational purposes only, and it just helps build the background for your role as the local contract review board.
And we have a public hearing on the 27th.
Yes,
So-
and part of receiving the findings of the fact is to actually conduct a public hearing, which we have noticed already.
Okay. So, homework. Okay, any questions for Mike? Okay, we're now up to public comment on non-agenda items. The first one up would be Rita Glass. And Rita, we ask that you give your name, address. You have 3 minutes. You know the drill. Okay. So.
Good evening, Superintendent Perry, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Leah, members of the school board. My name is Rita Glass, and I reside at 4384 Falcon View Way Northeast, Salem, 97305. As the president of ASCII-SP, I am speaking to you tonight on behalf of our elementary office managers and school office specialists to ask that as the district prepares the proposed budget for your review and adoption for 2018-19 school year, to please reinstate the health assistant positions for our elementary schools that were eliminated a number of years ago. Our schools are seeing an increase in the number of students who require medications to be administered. Our elementary schools have experienced a dramatic daily increase in student visits to the office for health room-related incidents, both medical and non-medical. Not only do our elementary office staff attend to the injured, calm the angry, provide medications on time with prescribed dosage to the correct student, and having to enter every incident into the district's electronic health room log, while assisting and communicating with staff, parents in person and by phone, and administration to meet all their needs. Our elementary office staff also now are expected to assist with students experiencing challenging behaviors and toileting protocols. Between September through December of 2017, there were a total of 15,155 entries made by our elementary schools on the health room log. My ask of you tonight as board members on behalf of our students, in order to adequately serve their needs, it is critical that our district reinstate the health assistant positions with the appropriate FTE based on the needs of each elementary school. Thank you for your time and consideration of reinstating health assistants in our elementary schools.
Thank you, Rita.
Gracias.
Thank you, Rita. Bonnie O'Hearn, did I get that right?
Good evening, Superintendent and Chair and Director. I'm really here as a nurse to support the office staff. And I'm reading this letter for one of the
I need your
office.
address,
Oh, you do?
your full name.
Bonnie O'Hearn, 2137 Nomad Court Southeast
Okay.
in Salem.
Thank you.
This is, like I said, I'm reading this for one of the office managers. The anxiety around the health room is not so much the training or the available resources as it is the high volume of constant distractions happening all the time. If I'm dealing with a heated custody issue at the front desk, the phone is ringing, a teacher is calling for help in a classroom, and a child has a seizure, the mistake won't be due to lack of training or support. It would more likely be because of the massive amount of multitasking I'm doing and the likelihood that one of my plates might drop. If the health room were the only thing I had to focus on and my attention wasn't so divided, I'd be way more confident in my ability to not miss a step or get the wrong dosage. But everything I attend to can have high immediate need as well. Example, restraining orders, student with high behaviors, vomiting, and that's what causes the anxiety for me, meaning the person I'm reading this for. People who never worked in a school office setting often thinks our concern is whether or not we had enough training. That's not the case. Training is definitely important. However, the problem is the intense division of my attention. Just last week, I had a 911 call in the health room with a kindergartner while my office manager was out on lunch break. So to try and call the nurse helpline, 911, 911, the office, the police, and to find help within the building. All of this in hopes that a plate doesn't drop. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Allison, is it Bud? Okay.
Good evening, Superintendent Perry, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Lee, and members of the school board. My name is Allison Buddy. I live at 1010 North Water Street in Silverton, Oregon, 97381. And I am here in support of asking the district to, as they begin to prepare the budget for review and adoption for the 18-19 year, to please consider reinstating the health assistant positions for our elementary schools that were eliminated in 2011. I work as an elementary office school manager at Forest Ridge Elementary School in Keizer. This is something I prepared for my new principal last year when he came, when he started, and he asked me what I did, because he didn't know. So this is a list of duties that I do, not all of them every day, most of them at least once a month, but it's a pretty comprehensive list of all of my responsibilities. And on this last page here, I highlighted, I don't know if you can see it, it says health room coverage and health view entry. So that's just one line item and almost 4 pages of single-spaced list. And I believe it's been added to by some other office managers. My concern is with, so the time of the period of the day, recess and lunch, at our school it's from 11:30 to 1:30. And the kids go out in different groups out to recess. This is where a lot of our injuries happen at school, also in PE. Heads get knocked together, balls hit heads, faces, noses, ears, all kinds of things. And then they come in a fairly steady stream during this time in the middle of the day into the health room when office staff is needing to take lunches as well. And my concern is always, I am not sure when there's a lot going on sometimes if I'm assessing the situation accurately. For instance, as a new office manager, I didn't know that the one who's really injured is the one who comes in and says, give me a Band-Aid, I'm going back to class. That's the one who you find out the next day actually had a broken bone in his cheek from a ball to the face. And so I often don't have the time that I want to really sit down and assess with these kids whether or not they're just being tough, whether it's just the way that they deal with pain. Sometimes I want to call the parent and say, what's your child's pain threshold? Because I'm feeling like this is more serious. But I don't always have the time to address that. And so reinstating school-based health assistants would provide more help in the office hopefully during that time of the day when the need is really high to help us serve our students better. Thank you.
Thank you. Tatiana Hotzenbieler.
Good evening, Superintendent Perry, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Lee, and school board members. My name is Tatiana Hatzenbieler, and I live at 390 Kevin Court, Southeast Salem, 97306. I am also here to speak in support of reinstating our school-based health assistants at the elementary level. They were eliminated in 2011.
I'm also here to support our elementary office staff. I am a school health nurse and have been with the district since 1995. In that time, I've worked with both secondary and elementary schools. I've seen 23 years of growth and changes in both healthcare and education. I have 6 elementary schools at this time and could not do my job without the office staff that I rely on daily. In addition to all of their school management duties, which are too many to list, as Allison just showed, we are also asking them to participate and perform in medication trainings with daily medication administration, severe allergy management, including epinephrine administration, daily type 1 diabetes management, including blood glucose monitoring, carbohydrate counting, and insulin dose calculation, immunization data gathering and entering, dental data and gathering, vision data and gathering, first aid, including head injury protocols, communicable disease information gathering and notification, including head lice checks, toileting and diapering, delegated healthcare procedures such as urinary catheterization, health information gathering through use of various forms, recording daily health information in our Synergy system, and following health management plans. This is just a list that I compiled within a few moments. I see these people in action every day, and they need help. I ask you to strongly consider reinstating the school-based health position in the elementary setting. Do you have any questions for me? I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Cindy Hoffert.
Let me look over my glasses. Good evening, Superintendent Perry, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Lee, and members of the school board. I am Cindy Hoffert. I live at 7555 20th Avenue South, Salem, Oregon 97306. And I am also a school registered nurse. I've been here for 17 years and then some. And I primarily work in the secondary schools by choice. One of those reasons is because they have more staff to support the kids, selfishly. And most high school students, neurotypical students, can count carbohydrates. They need very minimal help. Most neurotypical middle school and high school kids will tell you that they've already taken their medicine if they have. They're pretty good at making eye contact and saying, yes, I'm that person. Yes, that looks like the right pill. There are a lot of things that secondary ed kids do independently. And yet, middle schools and high schools still have school-based health assistants. Based on sheer numbers, there's a ton of kids who need help with medication, and we do have to provide that adult supervision. But I am, rather than saying the exact same thing all of the other nurses said and the office staff, I wanted to say that this school year, there has been so many lunchtime needs that are above and beyond a non-nurse staff to handle, especially new diagnoses like type 1 diabetes, that I've been in the elementary schools much more this year and have seen the profound need for school-based health assistants to be reinstated. I did not know, and I've been here all those years, which is why I wanted to come and just reiterate what the other people have said. So if you have any questions I could answer, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. It's a long night. I thank you.
Lynn Lanham.
Good evening, Superintendent Perry, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Lee, and the members of the school board. My name is Lynn Lanham, and I also reside in Salem at 5923 Aspen Way Northeast, 97317. And I also am a school health nurse as well as the program associate for health services and have worked for the district since 1995. Tut and I started together. So it's been over 23 years. And in those 23 years, I have seen the population of the schools grow, as you know, as you're working towards the bond measure. I've seen an increase not only in student enrollment, but in the severity of student health needs around just the chronic health illnesses that we see, the asthma, particularly our students with diabetes. And the way that we now treat diabetes has changed in that we require so much more support from school staff than we ever have before. We, as a health service team, send nurses out somewhere between 22 to as many as 30 students a day that we go out and administer insulin to because we, as a health services team, chose not to delegate that procedure out of concern that it would not be safe for our students. But in saying that, we rely heavily on our office staff to help students when they experience high and low blood sugar, as well as numerous other health needs such as asthma. As I looked at the health log entries, we see the typical stomach aches, headaches, the recess injuries, but we also see a new population of students who have significant social emotional needs. And we have some incredible office staff that try to meet the needs of those students when they come in with a stomach ache that is really related to something that might have happened at home. We started a school-based health assistant strand training this last year in hopes to help office people have the language to help kids really share what's going on when they come to the office just looking for support. But what we see, and I see as well because I go out every day to assist students, is that they don't have the time to address those needs. I see kids lined up in the office who should be at lunch, they should be at recess, or they should be in class, but they're waiting for their turn to have their needs met by the office person, to have parents called. I also see sometimes where parents are called quickly to come pick up their kids because nobody has the time to sit down and see if we can't convince this child that they could potentially go back to school. So I, as well as the other people that have spoken this evening, would like to advocate to have our school-based health assistants back during the time of day when they are trying to go to lunch. Parents are calling because it's their lunch break, and we have the highest volume of kids coming into the office. Thank you.
Thank you. April McVicker.
Good evening. My name is April McVicker. I reside at 1895 24th Street here in Salem. Today I'm here really to tell you a story of my daughter that attends middle school. She did attend Leslie Middle School till currently, probably about 2 weeks ago. She struggled for 3 years with being bullied consistently by the same person, by new people, and it just excelled and excelled. It's a snowball effect that I feel that there is a policy there, but there's no actions. There's no results. The teachers, unfortunately, were a part of this also, body shaming my daughter. It makes me sad, mad, and I'm concerned for my younger children that are going to be in school soon also. For my daughter to have to suffer through verbal abuse, things that I can't even say here because there are other children in this room, it's vile and it's disgusting to me. And there are programs implemented like Safe Oregon and other programs. The teachers are supposed to be there, but then there's really, again, no repercussions. There's no real results. For 3 years I've been battling with it and nothing has happened. So I'm here today begging you guys to please open your ears, your hearts, your minds, and really get results for these kids because they don't want to go to school anymore. They're ashamed of themselves. They have no confidence in what they want to do because they can't be who they are. The bullies need life enrichment. They shouldn't be shunned. If they're being a bully, there's a reason for it. And instead of just writing it off and disregarding it, like we've been doing, We need to get in touch with the parents. I never once was contacted when my daughter was bullied. Not once. I had to request for a communication logs from her counselor to see all the very disturbing things that were said to my daughter. It breaks my heart, and I only wish and I only hope that something will change so my younger children don't have to suffer and be ashamed for no reason. So I thank you for your time, and I really hope that something is done other than just offering help, because sometimes offering help isn't enough. You have to make the action. So thank you for your time. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to say Chavez. Okay.
Hi, good evening. I reside at 4678 Arizona Avenue here in Salem, and I just want to thank Superintendent Perry, Chairperson Kylo, and Mr. Lee, and the rest of the board members. I am also here in regards to a situation that happened to my daughter, who is at an elementary school. She attends Scott Elementary. She's 11 years old. She was assaulted during recess by another student, a male student. She had severe stomach pain. She already suffers from IBS. And so she was sent to the office with pain. There was a half day. I got a phone call from the vice principal that this had happened. And so I was on my way home from Portland. I said, well, I'm not there by the time school's out. Please have her walk home with her siblings. So that happened. I got home. She's curled up in her bed in pain. So I took her, gave her Tylenol medication to try to calm her down. Took her the next day to the doctor. We got sent to the ER to see if she had internal bleeding or what was the cause of the pain. She's been now in and out of the doctors. She was admitted to Salem Hospital a couple days after. The student that the incident happened with, to my knowledge, didn't have any consequences. This happened on a Wednesday. I went to meet with the principal, vice principal on a Friday to try to see what kind of plan was going to happen, so my daughter can be safe at school. They told me I could either move my daughter from the class, change her schools, or she would have to be put on the opposite side of the class of the student. And my daughter was not liking that kind of plan, and I was not going to move my daughter from that school because we live right in front. I wasn't going to take my 3 kids to a different school because the school was not doing the correct actions that they should have done to the student who has had previous incidents. And so she was out of school for a whole 2 weeks. She just went back. We had a meeting with John was a part of the meeting that we had on last Wednesday. She's starting slowly. We had a plan. They discussed the other students' plan to me and my daughter's plan. So she went to school Thursday and Friday for 1 hour. Everything was okay because the student was not in the class, and he was in a behavioral session or something that they call it on his plan. So she said that hour of school was fine. Yesterday evening, I got home from work, and she was in the class with the student without her safety plan that was supposed to be in place. So something was there, but it wasn't being followed through. So now she is out of school again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Edie Hayden.
Thank you, Chairperson Kylo, Superintendent Perry, Vice Chairman Lee, and school board members. My name is Edie Hayden. I live at 1250 21st Street, Northeast in Salem, Oregon. And I am a parent of a child that went through the school system. She is healthy and through college, and I am here merely as a voice to the voiceless. There are a lot of children in this school system that are bullied every day, and they have no voice. And we're supposed to prepare children at this level for the real world. I live and work in the private sector. I don't have any tie to the school district. But preparing kids at this level for the real world and not getting a plan like the strategic plan you have, so it's executable, so that there's actual consequences for kids, so they don't do this when they grow up and do this in workplace where it will not be tolerated at all. And if there is no consequence at this level, then you're basically pushing the can down the road, is all you're doing. And then they become people who end up doing shootings in businesses, or become kids who end up doing shootings in schools. There's got to be consequences at the lower level all the way up, so this does not become a problem that you're going to regret and you're going to be responsible for if this kid happens to be through this school system and you knew about it. Now, you may not have been bullied, or you may not have been bullied, and you may not understand what it's like to be bullied. But there are a lot of kids and a lot of parents who have to suffer through this every single day. They're my friends. They're my daughter's friends. And I taught her very young to be the voice for your voiceless. So she's an advocate all through school, from kindergarten on through school, for those people who were bullied, who suffered from eating disorders. And she had an advocate teacher like Carolyn Ream at Whitaker School, and she cannot be the exception to the rule on teachers. I'd like to think she's the norm. Thank you.
Thank you. Ross Schwartzendruber.
Good evening, Chair Kylo and directors and Superintendent Perry. My name is Ross Schwartzendruber. I live at 3655 Zeno Road, Northwest, Salem, Oregon, 97304. And tonight I'd like to talk, share a personal story about SBAC, opting out, and Common Core. So my children, I'm talking to you as a parent today. I have 3 children in the school system. And the transition, my oldest daughter went through the advanced math, 7th math program, transitioning from an elementary school to middle school, and was able to go into that track. That was during the Oaks testing. My youngest son went through the same situation 3 years later, but the elementary school had stopped teaching 6th grade Common Core in 5th grade. Some other elementary schools are still continuing to do that. So when you jump into try to get into the advanced track in 7th math, and you don't have that those foundations that other kids are getting in other schools, when you take the screener for the advanced 7th math class, you're not going to perform on a few of the assessments. And that's what happened. We were given 1-day notice for the screener assessment in 5th grade, and my son performed poorly, and because of that and opting out of SBAC, there was no SBAC to check. They did not rely on a teacher's recommendation and denied him entrance into this advanced 7th math program. And I asked a bunch of people up and down the district how to remedy the situation. And my son's a tag student, so ultimately that is what got him into advanced 7th math. But he was given an easy CBM at the beginning of both semesters. He scored an 89, which is the top of everything for knowing the content knowledge for the whole year at the beginning of the year. So when I asked what the difference is between an easy CBM, which I don't know what an easy CBM is, and I don't know why we're taking so many tests. Nobody told me anything about this. I would like to know how many assessments will my kid have to take in Salem-Keizer School District between the time he's a kindergartner and he's a senior. Could you please tell me and the public that? and how much it's costing, because that's an embarrassment. And it doesn't mean anything. There are no results. There's no research that supports any of this. And I would say some of the people talking about bullying, my son, who speaks a second language, was sticking up for another kid at school just last week. And since he speaks another language, he was called a Nazi. This is the second year that my son's been called a Nazi in school. Luckily, there is quick response from teachers and principals to remedy that situation. Other children are called other things like slaves in our middle schools. These things are real. They're happening behind teachers' backs. And I would like you guys to address that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of our list. Board activity report. Anyone have anything they'd like to report? Chuck?
I think it was January 31st, February 1st and 2nd, the Salem Chamber of Commerce put together an outstanding statewide CTE summit, extremely well attended throughout the state, and I think we can be very proud of the Salem-Keizer School District, students especially. I think we had student representatives from almost all 40 CTE programs at the summit, and again, we had people coming from throughout the state. Our kids did a great job talking about what they're doing in CTE, and just a reminder that the data shows that any kid who takes at least one CTE class has a significantly higher graduation rate than those that don't. Superintendent Perry and myself and Jim Orth and Rhonda Rhodes, we gave a presentation twice about CTEC that was very well attended, and we had people again from throughout the state coming to find out about CTEC and to see how they could duplicate it in their own communities. So it was a great opportunity, and it's my understanding that next year the Chamber is going to move that from a state summit on CTE to a national one. So Salem-Keizer has more CTE programs than any other school district in the state, and I think we're going to be at the cutting edge at the state and national level for career technical education.
Okay. Marty?
I can talk without coughing here. I just want to say it was a great turnout at McKay High School for Martin Luther King celebration. It was pretty packed that day. They did a great job.
Anyone else? Jesse?
I had the awesome opportunity to go see one of McKay's plays called Xanadu. It was fantastic. If you guys ever get the chance to visit any of our school's musical programs, it's phenomenal. Like, honestly, I would rather go there than go to the movies. It was so great. So there's these kids and their voices. If I could sing like that, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be in Hollywood somewhere. I mean, yeah, it was so good. So I was actually really impressed. So I do recommend for all of you to visit one of our school's plays because, dang, these kids are talented. Secondly, as you may know, I'm on the Legislative Policy Committee for the OSBA, for the Oregon School Board Association, and we had our first meeting in January where we learned the ropes because, first time. And then also we had the chance of going over a lot of the legislative things that are going on, which was, it was really cool. And then also I should be coming up with things later to share about that. Just want to let you know that we're doing it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I also attended the Xanadu one showing. It was good. And also the middle school honor band program. Kelly did a great job as the MC for part of it. And the high school honor band program is this Saturday night, 7 o'clock, North Salem High School. Superintendent Perry, you're on.
All right, I just have two comments. One, to tag on to Chuck's report on the CTE Summit. I think we need to do a big shout out to our career technical education teachers because they are working on a very intentional strategy around recruitment, both for our 8th graders coming into high school and then our sophomores' potential at CTEC. So I think we are actually going to see, my prediction will be that CTEC will be full in almost every program next year. So we're kind of anxious to see how that is rolling out. We had about 300 people attend a parent night and part of that was getting to showcase all our career technical programs. But really, our teachers have done monumental work on their recruitment strategy. Work that I thought was going to take about 1.5 years took them 6 months. So big shout out to them. And then I did want to highlight, as we're getting ready to kick off the Safe Oregon tip line on March 1st, Leslie Middle School is actually going to do a community safety summit. And so they have invited law enforcement, our Office of Behavioral Learning, Safety and Risk Management will be there. We're going to really think about the issue for Leslie and that community around bullying and cell phone technology and what does social media mean in this day and age. So that is on for March 1st, 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Leslie Middle School.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. There will not be an executive session tonight. I don't believe we need it. We will have one on the 27th, however, for a few minutes. So with that, we are adjourned. Happy Oregon's birthday. Happy Fat Tuesday. And whatever else we've got going on. So we are adjourned.